Mayor's frozen.
Yeah.
Here he is.
All right.
All right. Good afternoon, Mayor.
Good afternoon, Madam Clerk.
Ready for me to call the roll?
Absolutely. Yeah,
All right.
please.
Mr. Brennan,
Will is muted.
Present.
Mr. Rickaman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Present.
Ms. Devine,
Here.
Mr. Davis,
Here.
Mayor Benjamin.
Here.
Thank
Reverend McDowell, would you please give us a word?
Yes. Let us pray. Creator God, you've allowed us together today to seek your guidance and your wisdom. We understand that in the midst of chaos, there is development. Today in this chaotic world, we would ask that you would favorably look upon us, seal within us a sense of calmness in the midst of this storm. Lives are being changed. Our city is being changed. Allow us to sense in the midst of the storm a kind of peace that passes all understanding. Help us to feel rejuvenated in the midst of our anxiety. Touch each of us and allow this storm to quiet itself as we seek your wisdom. We ask it in your name. Amen.
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 Thank you, Councilman. Want to let the public know we're going to go into a period of executive session in a moment. First, I want to make a motion to amend the agenda for consideration when we emerge back at 3 o'clock, not later than 3 o'clock for our city council discussion, to amend the agenda to add ordinance number 2020-34. It's an emergency order declaring a stay-at-home, stay-safe ordinance for the city of Columbia, South Carolina. That's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And we'll have the opportunity to have a full discussion. We also have obviously opportunities for the public to submit questions. I have several here that I'll address during the 3 o'clock session as well. On the motion, we'll move the previous question. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rickaman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Ms. Devine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye. Mr. Duval, you have a motion?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I'd move we go into executive session for receipt of legal advice related to matters covered by attorney-client privilege pursuant to South Carolina Code 30-4-70A2 coronavirus update.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's moved and seconded. I want to assure the public we have a few items we have to cover as a council and receive legal counsel, but that the entirety of this discussion around the merits of the stay-at-home, stay-safe order, around the Resilient Columbia plan that we rolled out last week and we will be finalizing today. All those conversations will be happening in the public domain when we reconvene, not later than 3 p.m. With the previous question, clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rickaman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Ms. Devine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye. All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
All right, you're back live, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk, we have a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
We come out of executive session and go back into public session.
In a second. Ms. Davis, is there a second?
Second.
All right, move the previous question, clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Mr. Vine. Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye. All right. So we've got two items up before us. We're going to take up a recap of how the staff is putting into action a Resilient Columbia, our small business and nonprofit stabilization package second. So we have a full PowerPoint presentation on that, but we're going to take up the matter, a more pressing matter before us. First, we amended the agenda to take up Ordinance 2020-034, our focus on an emergency order declaring a stay-at-home, stay safe, stay-at-home ordinance for the city of Columbia. Want to go ahead and, Madam City Manager, I'll let you do your job. How about that? And we'll chime in and have an opportunity for robust discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor Benjamin. Our second item for today, beginning the public portion of the meeting, is the emergency ordinance, as Mayor Benjamin described. This is ordinance number 2020-034, an emergency order declaring a stay home, stay safe. This is ordinance again, emergency order declaring a stay home, stay safe for the city of Columbia, South Carolina. Mayor Benjamin.
Sure, Will, I'm sorry, Mr. Duval?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move adoption of the ordinance 20-20-034.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, now we're in discussion period. Thank you. Ms. Devine, did you want to say something? I was gonna.
Well, no, I was actually just talking to Ms. Knox about two things that I think we thought were in here and I don't see them. So I would like to amend the ordinance.
Well, okay, but please go ahead. I'm not sure we've actually laid the foundation just yet, y'all. So let's actually talk about the ordinance first, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Right, thank
but
you.
I can raise the two things. There are several things, but they're the two things that I think should be in here that I don't see included, unless one of you guys, TK is double checking, but she and I looked and I don't see them in there unless one of you can direct me to it. Two questions I got today that I do think need to be considered for adding to the Exhibit A of essential services. One would be, we have listed under 2 garages and we have under 11 automotive repair. I would add bicycle repair to that because people are traveling via bicycle a lot right now. And so we would need to make sure that that service is supported. Additionally, I don't see in here, and I don't think it's covered under necessarily professional services the way we have it written, is I do understand that because of what's happening right now, a lot of folks who have planned travel, spring break, summer, are canceling, trying to change those plans. And so I did speak to someone who works for a travel agency that although the majority of their employees are working from home, there does have to be 1 or 2 people in the office to process refunds and rebook and that kind of thing. So I do believe that we should try and find a way. I don't want to make it broad enough that allows, open-ended, but I do think for travel that's coronavirus related,
Thank you.
whatever, we need to include something like that.
Can we decide or move forward? I think, if there are a lot of businesses we need to talk about, but I think we ought to talk about
the ordinance itself. Yeah, absolutely. That was my hope. I mean, there are a number of legitimate an important interest to be considered here, but I think we need to have a very robust and public discussion about the ordinance itself, the need that some of us feel, the sense of urgency, and then also the significant concerns also expressed, I know, with some of you individually with me and things we're hearing from the community.
So, Mr.
I
Mayor,
think, yes, sir.
so we're talking about a two-pronged approach to look specifically at the ordinance now, and of course, to have the other conversation about essential services next.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
what I'm hearing?
Yeah, yes, sir. I think, I mean, I'll speak for about 60 or 120 seconds. I'll be concise, and then we'll have an opportunity for discussion, one discussion period. Well, I know there's broad support for the ordinance on council. Obviously, there's still some more discussion, deliberation that we need to consider. The reason why I brought this before council, and obviously several of you have raised it to me as priority for you as well, that we do this, is attempting to underscore and continue to do what we've been doing. We've been on a smart path, on a responsible path, trying to do every single thing we could possibly do to curb the growth of this virus in our community. Yesterday, America went over 1,000 deaths when just a few weeks ago we had 15 identified infected persons in this country. I saw a statistic this morning that actually stated that yesterday in New York City alone. And I know we're not New York City, but in New York City alone, that we saw more deaths than we've seen in the last 5 years in Afghanistan. That's not meant to be sensational, but it's meant to recognize that the rapid growth that we're seeing in the development of this virus, infections growing, doubling almost every other day. And some of the projections we've seen from scientists at USC that suggest that we might have 50,000 infections in several weeks, or even the suggestion from DHEC that it might be 8,000 infections, is precipitously high. And that every single thing that we should do, every single thing that we can do to slow this down, and our citizens are, so many of them, the vast majority of them, are acting responsibly, doing everything they possibly can, the vast majority. There's some who are still not. And we've got to step up and make sure that we make a decision in the interest of the long-term public health interests of this. We have a number of legitimate interests, a number of legitimate concerns that we have to balance every single day. Very few of them as significant and grave as this do we have to make with in a limited amount of time. But as I sit there and I think about the scales of justice, Lady Justice, and as we balance these things out, all these different concerns from business interests and the interests of the economy, the interests that we enjoy with every one of us has a bit of a libertarian streak to want to move about freely and do the things that we do. I mean, all the different interests that we have, when I put on one side of the scale the potential loss of human life, I can find nothing else that dramatically even comes close to balancing that scale. Everything we do, every dollar of public resources that we spend, and I believe, and I know, I mean, we haven't had a tax increase in a decade. We've cut millage by 12 mills. We've done every single thing we should do in the public interest. We've got to make sure that we step up. And if we spend X amount of dollars to save one life, I think it's worth it. If it's 2 or 3, I've heard some amazingly powerful stories, and also I dare say some disturbing stories, where some people are just doing simple math. You know, if we're looking at a mortality rate of 2% or 1%, it's not worth the investment. I couldn't disagree more. I could not disagree more. We've got to step up and do what's right, to do everything we can to flatten the curve, to ensure that limited healthcare resources are there, so that we can ensure the long-term public health of the people of Columbia, South Carolina, and the Midlands. And we should be doing that. We should be doing it. It's the right thing to do. It's a responsible thing to do. It's the moral thing to do. So I have some other comments to make later on. But that is the foundation of why we got here. This ordinance, for those of you who may be watching us online and just dialing in, I would encourage you to go to columbiasc.gov. Just on the right side of the homepage, you'll see a hyperlink to look at the ordinance in its totality. You can read through the verbiage, but then obviously get to the list of the essential services and sorts of businesses that Ms. Devine was referencing earlier, and I'm sure we'll have some debate and discussion around it. But so you're cued into exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about Ordinance 2020-034. The list of essential services is generally the same list used by the city of Charleston to try and encourage some consistency in the without having a clear direction from the governor as to exactly what he wants to see happen statewide. He's deferred to local governments, and we're acting on that. We're working through our police department. Our police department has been common sense. They've been compassionate in trying to make sure that 3 or more people aren't gathered, and we're all adhering to social distancing norms. We will take care of all of the other issues. Our first step right now is to do everything we can do as a community to get our arms around this public health crisis. If we do that, all the other economic issues will take care of themselves. So I say that because I thought it was important to make sure people know where to find the evidence that we'll be discussing. Continue to share emails. I'm getting them as we speak, and we'll have a chance to address them as well. And then we can get into the nuts and bolts of the ordinance as we go forward. But that is the purpose of why we're here. We have had also other cities reach out from across the Midlands and the Upstate as well, following what we're doing, and I believe also deciding whether or not they're going to act on behalf of their communities. But we've led thus far. I believe we need to continue to lead. We're in discussion period.
Can comment. I've gotten several texts as people ask if they can get online and comment or how they can be heard. How is that being done?
Where emails going to the clerk, Teresa? What's the and Madam Clerk, I know is on. What's the email address?
You can email me at cityclerk@columbiasc.gov.
Yeah, cityclerk@columbiasc.gov, and I have a list of those who submitted comments previously. Many of them were prior to the actual ordinance being made public, so I'll address those. But again, cityclerk@columbiasc.gov. Please send any questions that aren't answered by a reading of the ordinance to that email address, and we'll have them. I'll have them in hand, and I can address them.
Are you going to go? You going to go down the line, Mayor? How are you going to start the discussion?
No, I think we're in the discussion period right now. So
I guess,
please, Mr. Rickman.
If I can, obviously, I'm trying to understand what we're trying to accomplish, because I think our community has done a tremendous job. Most of the businesses are closed. I'm trying to figure out what businesses want to close, because what I'm here is basically every one of these businesses touches the public, every one of them. And it seems like the people who are being told to stay home through this are the people who aren't dealing with the public for the most part. I heard we're going to add bicycle shops. Terminex and other pest controls are asking we're basically have covered every business in Columbia. Which businesses are we trying to defer? Because the people who are getting hurt are the working folks right now. The folks like the lady who cuts my hair, who can't see anybody, but 4,000 people can go to Walmart, Lowe's, everywhere else to shop and pick, and probably have more of a chance collecting it there. So I'm still trying to grasp on what we're trying to accomplish with this, because we're not prohibiting anybody from going anywhere or doing anything really other than dining in. We've covered everything in this ordinance that so far we're getting ready to add the rest of them, because there's a list of several more. I don't understand how this is going to help our community at this point. I think we need to be encouraging our folks to say, guys, look, we need to continue to do what we're doing. We need to stay home. We need to make sure that the folks who are at high risk are voluntarily self-quarantining. And if they don't have family or friends or neighbors to pitch in, that we have a way to get to them, make sure that they're getting their food, their supplies, their medicines. But, you know, to just suddenly say we're going to do it to stay at home, but then have every other business open. So construction's going to continue on, laundromats are going to continue on, dry cleaning, gas stations, Target, everywhere. What is this? How is this going to flatten the curve? We've been flattening it. We're seeing numbers now because people are testing. But if you take DHEC's numbers, you know, if you want to take somebody else's numbers, great. I guess we have to go with the authority in our state, which is DHEC. And looking at their numbers, their projection is what, 8,000 over a thing. Well, we can continue to contain that number by doing what we're doing and encouraging people to necessarily not go out when they don't have to. But if they're going to the grocery store, they don't make it a family outing. They're just, I still haven't grasped how this is different than what we're doing now, other than you're punishing some of the businesses who still can operate. If a guy has a promotional company and he has 50 people in there working, shipping out orders and stuff, and they're 6 feet apart and they're doing everything, and all they do is interact with business at home, is that spreading it? It's no different than going to Walmart. It's no different than going to Publix. It's no different than going to the CVS. If people are staying 6 feet apart, they're not limiting the amount of people going into these stores. So, you know, I think this is drastic. And I say that because for the last 2 to 3 weeks right now, businesses have been suffering down, and a lot of smaller businesses. And when I look through it, the effects and the people have been out, I don't see how a month of this is going to change anything other than making sure that people just are getting their essentials. This doesn't change what we're doing now at all.
Okay. That was a lot, and I'm trying to make sure that I was actually saying a number of questions. I was trying to make sure we addressed them. So the list of essential services comes from a list articulated by the Homeland Security Administration. A few other services have been added to meet the culture of our economic infrastructure here in Columbia. But this is an SHA list that Charleston used in composing their ordinance, and we've added a few essential services to it. So that's where that started. But I understand, and I understand your concern, Daniel. We talked a lot over the last several days, and I also share concerns about our small business community. I do agree that this will allow significant portions of our community to stay at work, allowing people to continue providing the services and the economic infrastructure that we need. But the purpose here, which I think is the essence of your question and concerns, is that we need to push, enforce, and encourage a cultural shift, a paradigm shift in the way in which we operate, encouraging people to stay at home, stay safe. This is not a terrorist. This is not a terrorist event. This is not a shelter in place. Our hair is not on fire, but there needs to be a consistent and enforced sense of urgency around our individual roles. The vast majority of people, yes, that you know and that I know, are doing the right thing. A whole lot of people are not. And we got to continue as a community, and then obviously we'll talk a little bit later on about some of the things we're doing to try and make sure that we reinforce the efforts of Prisma and DHEC and everyone else to get good data on our community that helps us even make more informed decisions. But we are trying to push for a cultural and paradigm shift that if we do what we're supposed to do here in the Midlands and begin to flatten the curve, make sure that limited public health resources are not consumed before they need be, then we'll get out of this quicker than other communities. And that's our goal. We want to do the things that we need to do on the front end so that on the back end, the tail of this is much shorter. Are there guarantees? No. We're going to look for a twofold increase every few days, just like every other community across the world is seeing right now. We are. And the more tests you see, then the more infections we're going to see. We're going to encourage more testing here through the city. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But I will tell you, I think this is one of the cases where we want to look back in hindsight and say, if we've done A, B, C, or D on March 26th, we could have saved more lives. We've got to step forward and put the preservation of human life at the front of our agenda. I know that these are difficult decisions. They're very difficult decisions for us. We've talked a lot. I've talked a lot to all of you and literally, just like you, to dozens of citizens and community leaders and business leaders and public health professionals every single day. Talk to friends from across the world who are also dealing with this in their communities and trying to adapt their best practices. But we're talking about trying to reinforce a cultural shift. Every one of us needs to do more. They can do more if we're modeling the type of behavior that we need to make sure it happens here. The quicker we do this, the sooner we'll get out of this. But the list, as you articulated earlier, yes, we'll allow our community to keep working. But this list is based on Homeland Security Administration's recommended list with a couple of additions to meet our community's DNA. Yes, sir.
Fair, I think it'd be fair. You mentioned a lot of people weren't and things weren't getting done correctly. Could you give us some information on that? Because I haven't been aware of any of that. Have I seen any documentation around that?
Sure. No, I've gotten calls and actually reached out to the police department from student house parties to even engagement on the streets, engagement in our parks. Daniel, we've got to make sure that, and I know it's a tough decision. I know it's a tough discussion. I know it's a tough discussion. I know it's not easy. And obviously, us moving forward the curfew just last week after the governor made his decision to shut down the hospitality industry. That was a tough decision. This discussion that was actually easier than this discussion. But I got a call from a state legislator yesterday that identified 36 young people having a party in his neighborhood, and had to call CPD to respond to it. There was an issue on Main Street yesterday. Again, dozens of young people. If we do this, and then we actually also start helping complement an aggressive testing infrastructure, complementing what's happening at Prisma, what's happening with other institutions, including DHEC right now, that starts giving us more testing. Good testing gives us good data gives us more intelligence, and it allows us to make even smarter policy. Right now, a cultural shift, a paradigm shift in the way in which we think that will help save lives down the road. But those are just two examples right there in the last 24 hours. Other comments? Anyone else?
Well,
Ms.
Mr.
Devine,
Mayor.
I'm sorry, Mr. Davis and Ms. Devine.
I think where we are now with the discussion, it kind of sort of opens your eyes and your thinking to, again, what we're trying to do. And I don't have any issues with the points that you're making. One of the things that has happened is, I know this morning and last night, I've spent a lot of time responding and reading emails and listening to what folks are saying in terms of why we should go in that direction. Maybe either using Charleston as an example, or what do we have now? Washington, Detroit, a number of states are going in that direction. But I'm surprised at the number of organizations that folks have made a case to be considered essential. And leading up to this point, it's a question of whether some are in fact essential. I wouldn't profess to make, that magic call of elimination, but it goes back to what we're trying to accomplish. Part of it is in fact trying to massage human behavior, given the magnitude of the challenge that we're facing, and it's a tough call. Some folks don't want to make that call. I also got, for example, some communications regarding the bicycle repairs. That I don't have a problem with that, because bicycling is sort of individualized. It does provide some separation there when it comes to movement. So that would be essential. I wouldn't have a problem with that. But when you also look at some of the associations that kind of back or I guess advocate for let's say distribution, and then the question is, what entity is one of those distributors? I have more sympathy for retailers more so than distributors. But then again, you'd have to isolate that. So I've tried to get into the weeds on this, and I'm hoping as we go through it to the end that we can come to I guess a compromise on what is in and what is out. If we do that, then I think we can stand on our decision to go forward with the main intent of the ordinance.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, if the list of exemptions is modeled as I said again,
Right.
on the Homeland Security Administration as essential services, and also on the Charleston Ordinance, just in the interest of trying to create some type of statewide consistency. Mr. Duval and I even discussed the possibility of maybe the Municipal Association playing a role in helping develop a model ordinance in the absence of statewide action. So the goal was trying to develop some consistency. If in fact, after if we move forward with this and determine that other services might be deemed essential that were an oversight, then I think we obviously exercise the latitude to come back and address them at that time.
Or in some cases, they don't meet the criteria.
Yes, sir.
Some, not
Yes, sir.
all. I mean,
Yes, sir.
it's
Yes,
a
sir.
give and take there.
Mr. McDowell?
Yes.
I'm sorry. And then Mr.
sorry. All right.
No, Ed.
Go ahead, Ed. I'll go after Ed. Go ahead, Ed.
All right, thank you. Let me just say a personal word. And I want to say, Daniel, I hear your concerns, and I know your passion relative to those concerns. But when I hear the question, what are we to accomplish in reading this ordinance? It's a human tragedy for someone down the street to die of COVID-19. This is we're in a human crisis that sort of says to each of us, we've got to do our part. Of course, all the data is not in, but on the side of caution, I think it behooves each of us to move in a direction where our residents, our constituents are safe. We understand that this essential list of services aren't complete. I've read them, but it seems to me that it would probably be to our best interest to really look at the human loss that is possibly going to take place. The numbers aren't all out there yet, but at least we need to move in a direction where we're protecting those persons who need protection. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, Ms. Devine.
Yes, sir. Just a couple thoughts. Number one, I clearly understand Mr. Rickman's points. I think, certainly I think we all share it. Several of us are small business owners ourselves, and we're struggling. So, I mean, I know that having to balance the economic stability of our community and making sure that our citizens are safe, they're not mutually exclusive. And I think that we've done more than most other local governments in, our resilience plan that we're about to discuss and other things, trying to keep these businesses open. And so I think that at some point we've got to really figure out what does the data show and what are best practices from other areas show as far as how we can help, stop the spread and keep people safe. And I would just add that one of my biggest concerns is what apparently, with everybody's dealing with, apparently will be the overwhelming of our medical facilities. And, we don't want to be in a situation where we could have made an action now that at least slows the ability for our medical facilities to just be overwhelmed, where we're going to be running out of equipment and, not being able to house people who are really sick and having to make decisions as to, who gets medical treatment and who doesn't. And I'm hearing that not just from what we hear in New York and bigger places, but I just got off a call with National League of Cities Board of Directors, and we're hearing, similar stories from other areas that don't even have those numbers yet. And I think looking at our numbers, we have to do everything possible. And I think the thought that this won't be effective, I think is false. I mean, there are a lot of people who are currently voluntarily trying to stay at home and not come out, but because it hasn't been in order, there are a lot of folks who are well-meaning folks who have not. And over the last, 12 to 18 hours, I've heard from a lot of people when they first heard we were talking about this, and they've said, this is my business is XYZ. Would I be affected? And not knowing what this body will pass, but kind of knowing where we were trying to go, I was honest with some folks who, yes or no. Mr. Rickman asked, what other businesses are not listed. Well, we've talked about gyms, we talked about nail salons, we talked about hair salons, and they're not exempted from this current ordinance. Those have still been open. And I've heard from folks who have those businesses who, yes, it's going to be hard for them, but they understand that, even though they've tried to do social distancing where they've understood that if this goes in effect, that means that they have to be closed. And so I think that having the ability to stem the tide on where we're going and where our numbers are, is our responsibility. And I just think that that's one of the things that we have to consider. I think what we as a leadership of this city need to continue to do, though, is figure out, how we can best get information out to our citizens, help support them. And then when we do get through this, then put everything else we can into continuing to build our business back up. But if a business has to be closed for 2 weeks, as opposed to us having our numbers skyrocket like other places and people, passing away. I mean, we are all learning more and more people who are not just affected by the virus, but who are passing away from the virus. And I just think that at some point we've got to take a leadership role and say, we've done incremental things that I think have been effective. But if we're going to really be more effective, we've got to put some more things in place. So it pains me to really even to consider this. And I have good friends with businesses that will have to close for this period of time. And I'm not delighting in the fact of telling them that they're not going to be able to be open for the next 2 weeks. But they understand that they have a role to play as well, and they're willing to do it. It means that we can keep our community safe. So I support it. I'm very concerned about us not taking further steps and not just putting something in place, but also enforcing it. Enforcement is very important, but I think we have to take this step.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. I'm sorry, Ms. McDowell's gonna have Mr. Brennan and then Mr. Rickman has hand up to you. Did you have something else, Ms. McDowell, as a follow-up to
yes.
that?
Mr. Mayor, let me just ask this question. What, the essential services summary that I've read, does that I know it's attached to the ordinance, but does it give us leeway if this ordinance is passed to include others or other businesses?
Yes, sir, it does. It does, if we choose to do so. Yes, sir. If we
So
choose to
it's
do
a
so.
So it's a
I think
two-step process. We approve,
But-
if we approve the
we-
ordinance, we then have a conversation about elongating the,
No, sir, no, the ordinance, the addendum to the ordinance of essential services would be included in passing the ordinance. If we wanted to consider other services that might not be
all right.
contemplated, obviously that we should discuss that. I think Ms. Devine is going to bring some up again. Mr. Brennan?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I want to, I guess, continue the conversation that Councilwoman Devine had about the enforcement of all this. First and foremost, I want to thank all the citizens of Columbia that have been doing their part, have been social distancing. I know I see families walking through the neighborhood, and I truly thank everybody for doing that. But not everybody's doing that. And that's the issue that I have. 80% are living the path that we want. When everything was put in with the curfew, I think that was a wake-up call. But it's not getting to everybody. I guess at the root of it, I believe the next 14 days in the Midlands is very important for public health. That is the root of why we are having these conversations today. It is a very important period. And I believe that layering in the law enforcement that needs to be there through McMaster's guidelines that he put out is very important right now. So this is I think the frustrations with everybody, small business owners, there's this gray area that we're operating in. Well, this is the certainty of how we're going to move forward in the next 14 days. We have to get the data in, and the data is critical right now. So I really want us to focus on pushing the law enforcement side of this, making sure that we are following the edicts that are put down by the state and going that extra mile, because it's very important for the next 14 days for public health, for me, you, all council members, all family, every citizens of Columbia.
Thank you, Will. Let me have Mr. Duval's first comment, then I think Mr. Rickman had his hand up, then we'll go back to Mr. Davis.
Mayor, I think we're fighting two big battles here. We're fighting a disease battle and we're fighting an economic battle. The tools that City Council in Columbia, South Carolina is best used for fighting the disease battle. We have a federal Congress that is getting ready to put $4 trillion to help us on the economic battle. We need to take advantage of what tools we have to stop the disease or to at least slow it down. Because what we do today and in the next 14 days will take 14 days or 28 days to show up in statistics. We have to be as hard as we can against this disease so that we will come out on the other end with a healthy population that can then take advantage of the federal release to get back in operation. And I believe we will get back in operation quickly, not by Easter, but sometime quickly.
Thank you so much, Mr.
Mr.
Duval.
Mayor, before they go on, can we just say ahead? I'm getting texts just to remind people the ordinance is on our website. If you click on today's agenda and go under agenda packet, you can see the ordinance and the list of essential businesses that we're referencing is attached.
It's also connected to the page. if that's
Okay.
clear for people.
Switch to the page here. So if they're watching it on YouTube, I think some people are watching. WIS is doing a live feed, a Facebook Live, so they need to go to our website.
Right.
Thank you. Sorry for the
Thank
interruption.
you. All right. Mr. Rickenman.
Y'all, you centered a lot.
You're breaking up.
You're breaking up, Daniel.
I'm sorry. I want to thank y'all. I mean, you're articulating or trying to talk about, worried about the health of our community. And I still don't think that the questions answered, which was, how is this different and going to do that? When I read this list of businesses, we're not changing the interaction of people anywhere. We have every possible thing. So just from essential retail operations, grocery stores, beverage stores, pet food stores, medication, big box, which any wholesale clubs, grocery stores, pharmacies, convenience stores, direct consumers, gas stations, restaurant bars, all the businesses that we're really concerned are closed. So I'm still grasping is we're going to shut down other businesses that have less contact and more here. I'm still struggling with how this is different and how this sips, because this doesn't prohibit anybody from getting in their car and going to all of these businesses and shopping and doing their things. I mean, what we need to encourage is, one, say thank you for the people who have done the right thing. Two, those folks who continue to break the ordinances, allow the police. I think our police chief's discussion early, we're limited. We have not had that many incidents. And I think it's been in certain areas, and I think we know where those are. And I think the chief and them are doing the right thing and they're addressing it. I think we got to encourage the self-quarantine of those folks that are high risk. But I don't see how all of this still, when I read all of these businesses, we're just not changing anything. What does the stay at home, sheltering, whatever you want to call it, really doing that we're not doing now? Kids are home. People who can work from home are at home. People who are out there, doing everything they can, but yet because we deem your business not essential, you can't go to work. But if you don't have any customers and you don't have anybody coming in, why can't they go to work? I mean, look at the list of this. I mean, there must be 250, 300 different types of businesses. And I get everybody, there is a fear of growth. And if you look at, I wish Dr. Bell could be on in our meeting. It'd be great to hear from her because they projected curves based on what they see and what they're taking historic facts. I know there's concern about hospitals, but I'll be honest with you, a lot of the medical community is being let go right now. There are a lot of people being let go because there isn't business for them. We talk about ventilation and beds. South Carolina has over 7,000 beds. And even with the projection that you're using and using the New York numbers, as you mentioned earlier, Mayor, you're talking about 1,000 people that could be hospitalized. You could talk about 350 people who may need ICU. It could be higher. It could be less. We all don't know that. But when we're talking about this and we say it's only 2 weeks, it's not 2 weeks. And y'all need to remember that as we go forward. It's been 2 weeks. We're going into a month. We're gonna lose a lot of businesses throughout this. We're also gonna have people who are gonna get affected, and there's probably a lot of people walking around today. Everybody's symptomatic is different, and not everybody. And 90%, and this needs to be said, 90% of the people being tested are coming out negative, which is great. That means we are doing something positive. But I would encourage us to really think hard and proud that we're doing this not on emotions, but on fact, and understand the long-term consequences. And I think it's just important that we look at it that way and take that into consideration.
Thank you, Daniel. Ms. Devine?
Oh, I'm sorry. Was Mr. Davis first?
Sure.
Well, I'll be quick. I truly understand Daniel's points, and obviously, you know, he's as vigilant as we are in terms of the backgrounds and looking at the results of what we've done up to this point. But I don't mind saying also that, you know, I go out not as often, well, maybe a little too often, even Walmart and places like that. Or, you know, yesterday I was driving with my gloves on, and I see some things that tell me that, one, there are some folks who really should not be out there. Some of the ones with young toddlers just in areas where they shouldn't be. They're walking the street. No sense of protection or awareness of some of the precautions that need to be taken. And so that is my concern. And so and I, again, fully understand and support the reason for the ordinance. And by the way, we would not be the only municipality in the country right now attempting to do that. And I think we're all seeking the same results. So I see a need for it, but it may be that we may want to have I don't mind having more discussions on what is considered essential and what is not. I think, Daniel, that seems to be, I think, one of the cautions that you're kind of, you know, hanging your hat on there. And maybe that can be tweaked some.
Right.
Everything is not essential.
Yeah, we can
And you're
discuss.
saying if it is, and Daniel's saying if it is, then we don't need the ordinance. And I don't think that's where we're headed.
No,
Devine.
thank you. Ms.
Yes,
Devine?
yes, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry.
Just a couple of things. Number one, and I hear Mr. Rickman's point about not everything is essential, but again, there are businesses that are not essential that are not listed here. I think we've tried to balance the concerns that he's raised about businesses and closing businesses and being able to at least have things that we know our citizens will need access to if they're staying at home, to at least allow them to be open. But I guess one thing I might put on the table, if I'm hearing Mr. Rickman correctly, he keeps talking about businesses that are not, it sounds like not open to the public. I know businesses right now that are open to the public and people are going and they are crowded. And so they should be shut down to help us not spread the curve, spread the disease. But if let me finish. If there are businesses, I guess this is not currently in the draft, but maybe we need to consider and I don't know if this completely addresses his point, but maybe if there is a business owner that will not be open to the public, but needs to go to work to, you know, and someone said, you know, do their taxes, clean up, do whatever. You know, we might want to consider maybe having something like, if it's a business that's not open to the public, then maybe that's a service that they can provide. But if they can provide it, then they might also do that from home. So I just put that out there for conversation and consideration if that does address his point. But I do also, the other thing I wanted to say is that we really, again, I don't want to lose the point that we know that we have the cases, and yeah, there might be 90% that are testing negative and all this other stuff, but we know the numbers will go up. And I'm not sure these medical folks who are laying people off, they might not be essential medical folks, and hopefully maybe they can start helping some of the others. But I talk to people in the hospitals, I've talked to nurses, and the numbers are rising, and they're balancing it now, or they're handling it now. But if the numbers continue to go up, which we know they will, we will see an overwhelm of our healthcare system, and we do not need that in this city. And so if we can do something today that keeps us from getting there, then that's what we need to be doing. We don't need to wait and see, because it'll be too late.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Devine. There's been a lot, and a lot said, and I want to address some of it, but I want to see if you have any more comments before then. And then I'm ready to entertain the question. I know there was some other discussion around essential services, and again, let's keep in mind that we do have leave to come back and consider additional services. The foundation of this list, I'll articulate again, is not to try and keep businesses open. It is to try and identify those essential services that citizens need, even when you're doing a stay at home, to be able to access those businesses to maintain as close to a normal life as they can, and to begin to remove from that other optional things that we ought not be doing. And again, trying to enforce a paradigm and cultural shift in the way in which we operate. So, Mr. Rickerman, please. Before I have to call the question, I want to go through some of the citizen comments and questions we've gotten as well. I may do it immediately after, so we can at least make sure those voices are heard. Mr. Rickerman.
I just want to make sure that people understand that, you know, we're talking about businesses, we're talking about the entire thing, and businesses mean employees, those employees who need the income, and the folks who are generally affected in this, which are those folks, and all the business folks that I've talked to and the people out there are worried more about their employees than they are anything else, and making sure, because that has a trickle down, and it goes when a restaurant does an order, then the distributor, and all that trickles down. And so when we're having this discussion, this isn't about capital. This is about people's lives and business. And so I just want to make sure people who are listening understand that this is a bigger discussion. This isn't about just plain simple about business and the owner. This is about everything that's connected to it. And truly that's what you're hearing. And you know, I mean, I know it from the medical side because I live in it at home, and I know it from the business side because I see it there. And so I feel like I'm hearing it from a lot of folks who are very scared, upset. I mean, there was a dentist office today that laid off 45 people because they have no business. And so this next step, it scares them because it's not 2 weeks. It could be a month. It could be longer. We all don't know the answers to it. But I just want to make sure that people understand this is about everybody, from the guy who, from every employee, business owner, landlord, etc., bus driver, you name it, this is about them. And I just want everybody to know that's what we're discussing. And we all can have different opinions.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
This is what we're talking about, people's
lives. Absolutely. And we are talking about people's lives and certainly the impact it has on livelihoods. We got word from a friend and neighbor last night that, and so many people believe this is an ailment that only affects seniors. She's 39 years old with a small child, a medical professional who is struggling right now with the virus. She asked me to use my public platform to make sure people understood that this is not something that only afflicts seniors in the very worst way. She's fighting for her life right now. So this is about lives. DeAndre and I got word today that a childhood friend that she's known since kindergarten has underlying health issues, but is younger than us, is also fighting the virus right now. Will be fighting for her life based on what we know, the impact it has on those with underlying health conditions. So this is about lives, and this is about livelihoods. If we get ahead of this and we do the right thing based on what every single legitimate public health professional in the world tells us we should do, every epidemiological study and trend tells us we need to be doing right now, then we will save lives. We will save lives. We'll get out of this quicker, than some other communities that choose not to act, and we'll get back to doing business even sooner. We don't have the luxury. Time is our enemy. We do not have the luxury of not doing something and doing it sooner rather than later. The ability, again, back to the questions earlier, to consider other services that are legitimate and ought to be considered now. We can do that, and we can take leave to do that at some other point. But we need to go ahead and bring this conversation to a close for this phase of our discussion, unless there's something else we need to put forward right now. All right. I'll move the previous question. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Brennan?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, does that include my 2 amendments?
Go ahead and articulate your two amendments, Ms. Devine. What were they again for discussion?
Okay, it would be to add,
And again, I think if we're going to make amendments, let's assure that that there's a public policy reason as an essential service, and then also, or at very least, seeking consistency in the articulated essential services. I mean, for example, if we're going to do automobiles and sales and service, along with bike sales and service, motorcycles should be included. That's consistency. But let's be very careful to make sure that that's what we're doing there. So, Ms. Devine.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to make sure you got your public.
Ms. City Manager.
oh,
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to go through those ad nauseum.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Ms. Devine.
okay, yes, sir. I just wanted, so for number 7, under financial institutions and professional services, it has a list of things. I wanted to add travel services related to corona. I apologize, not Your Honor, Mr. Mayor. I don't want to be overly broad, so I'm just putting it out there. Let me just put out there the concern I got. There are travel agencies that are processing cancellations of trips and refunds. Our citizens need that money, so I don't want to prohibit them from being able to do that. So I don't exactly know, but I don't want to leave it open-ended, to your point of it not being essential. So it maybe if Ms. Knox could help me with language there, but I do think we need to include that so that people can get their change and not have additional fees for not changing travel. But then the second one is under 11, where it's automotive repair. That we could include bicycle and motorcycle repair on there.
All right.
Sales and service.
I would support those. I would support those two motions.
All right. All right. Mr. McDowell and Mr. Rickman. Did you have something, Mr.? You're on mute, Ed. You're on mute, Ed.
Doesn't this still give us the latitude to amend the essential service list?
Yes, sir.
All right.
It does.
Okay, very good.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Rickman.
Are we including printers, print shops? I have this company's been printing these for things. It's not listed on here. Are they going to be able to operate? Also, I sent the city manager and the city attorney a list from Delaware that was divided everyone. I think there needs to be a clear decision if you're going to move forward with this, because obviously Charleston voted on something and then they had to clean it all up the next day because they weren't.
I think it's I believe if it's important. I'm trying to determine where.
That's printing.
Yeah. I'm fine. I'm fine with each of those amendments, and I haven't seen the other list that you're referencing, Daniel. We probably will need to take leave to come back for Mr. Everyone, Mrs. McDowell, everyone's admonitions to come back and be able to take a look at the list. those providing essential printing services, bicycle, motorcycle sales and services, and however we're able to articulate. I mean, most travel reservations are made online right now, but there are still travel agencies. We certainly want to make sure people who are canceling long planned trips are able to get that money back in their pocket. With language that allows us to do that in the most considered, restrictive way possible. All those 4 areas added to the list of essential services. Did you have something, Mr. McDowell?
Yes, I would just simply, again, move the previous question, noting that there are essentials that will be added and discussed.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Clerk, call the roll. Thank you. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rickerman,
No.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Mr. Vine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye. I'm going to very quickly go through and thank you all. I will tell you this. I've said it a lot lately. I say this with every degree of sincerity in my heart. I'm blessed to work with each of you. We have a council that's thoughtful, that leads with your heart, you lead with your head. We try to make the best decisions in the interest of the people that we've sworn to serve, in the interest of their prosperity and also in the interest of posterity. So I want to thank you all for the robust discussions that we have, even when we made this agree, we do it in a way that I believe makes our constituents proud, respectful. I'm going to very quickly go through some of the citizen comment, and then, Madam City Manager, we're going to continue with the agenda. Is that okay?
Yep.
All right. Very quickly, many of us have gotten the same question as whether or not church tech teams would be able to access their sanctuaries to live stream. So many churches have gone on to, and if you can mute, guys, I want to make sure you mute so we don't catch any background conversations. Will church tech teams be able to access their sanctuaries to live stream on Sundays? Will church offices be allowed to open? The answer is yes. The reason why churches are not addressed in this ordinance is it's clear that the freedom of religion is a First Amendment right, that it's not our authority or our prerogative to interfere with. We would hope and pray, however, that any houses of worship would adhere very closely to the social distancing guidelines articulated by the federal government, state government, and your local government. Telehealth providers referenced in the whereas clauses it's a broad reference to telehealth providers, not only to Prisma. Mr. Rickman, you have him in, and Mr. Headley and Casey, who is a liberal Democrat who's endorsing you. I guess the good thing is you have a liberal Democrat, but the problem is he lives in Casey. Okay, so we'll keep on moving there. We addressed the issue regarding motorcycle dealerships and sales and service. They are included as an essential service. I've gotten this a lot today, and it's just important to reference this. There are a number of people who either work at local restaurants or manage local restaurants who are concerned about common area being accessible, and that has a challenge of spreading the virus. I know the governor's order allows for takeout and delivery and carry out everything except for dine in. That's an issue regarding the governor and how he chooses either to expand upon or not upon that. But that is a concern I've heard consistently that the governor may have to address. Providing legal services, particularly some of those essential services regarding wills and healthcare power of attorney documents, is included as an essential service and exempt under the ordinance. Again, those people who are maybe tuning in right now who want to know exactly what the ordinance says, with the exception of a few amendments made in the last few minutes, I encourage you to go to columbiasc.gov. columbiasc.gov. in the ordinance is laid out on the first page. The question as to how this will be enforced, we are going to take enforcement of this very seriously. Our city police department is exercising incredible common sense and compassion in enforcing this. But the governor's direction under his emergency order is very clear that if you're congregating in public, that more than three persons is to be strongly discouraged, and our police department, our park staff, when appropriate as well, will enforce it. But obviously, the greatest enforcer will be us exercising personal responsibility. But city staff and park staff will help enforce the ordinance. Will firearms dealers be essential? No. Mr. Dougal wants to express his opposition to the ordinance, and we appreciate that. Mr. Gregory wants to express his support of the ordinance, and we appreciate that. We are encouraging people, obviously, to stay healthy within reason, to stay active and outdoors. So we certainly it does not ban someone from outdoor exercise and stay healthy. If you work outside the city, are you still allowed to go to work? Yes, you are allowed to go to work. Again, this is a stay home, stay safe, stay healthy ordinance. This is intended to try and deal with us affecting the long-term public health curve of this ordinance. We are trying to stop it in its tracks. Okay. I do have one email, and I'll make sure that the preferred pronoun is I guess they them, but the question is how we are dealing with the issues on food and shelter to the homeless. I would encourage citizens that we're doing every single thing possible, working in close cooperation, regular calls with the United Way and all the service providers here in the Midlands. Prisma has become a great partner in that effort as well, and our staff is dealing very effectively with our unsheltered citizens as well. I'll be happy to send back a personal email to you to make sure if you want to find ways to help with that effort, that you'll have access to that. We have a question about tenant protections and rent. Obviously, the Chief Justice Supreme Court issued an order on evictions last week. Evictions are stayed for the next month and a half. Let's see. I expect that in the legislation, and hopefully some things that happen at the state as well, there may be additional relief. I know that our staff is currently pouring through the legislation to see what's available to citizens. There will be increased police presence in the community, still doing the jobs that they've always done every single day, but also helping to work with this ordinance. Yes, and if you have other ways to help us effectively manage the live stream or this new way in which we're handling meetings until we get beyond this very dangerous time with the virus, please stay in close touch with the clerk or directly with office Stephen.Benjamin@columbiasc.gov. Okay. All right. Yeah, and I will say that we've extended extensive communication to the county and to at very least our friends in Forest Acres, trying to ensure there's some type of consistency in regional policy making, and hopefully that will be to come. There will be more policy on the across the state on a local level, as the governor has determined that he believes these policies should be made at the local level and not at the statewide level. But we do believe, just as we do with almost everything else, that there should be regional consistency, and certainly at least within Richland County. When we revisit this, and my sense is we'll probably have another opportunity to do so over the next week or so, there's a comment that the professional pest control industry is essential service industry as well. I'm sorry, I'm almost done, y'all. So I appreciate your patience. This is a disagreement with the governor's position on 3 or more persons. We can't affect that. Okay, another legitimate personal concern. They need talks with the county to coordinate these efforts. Yes, just reference them. Construction is deemed an essential service under the ordinance. Okay. Okay. And I'm down the last 3 pages, y'all. Is that saying that? Okay. Okay. Again, yes, under the ordinance, the contractors, construction services are considered an essential service, and including manufacturers, steel manufacturers, or construction. The last, and these are the comments that were submitted in advance of the meeting, and each of those have been addressed. Comprehensively, and they are about balanced in their support or opposition to additional action by council, equally so. I will put all these get all these back to the clerk for preservation in the public record. Mr. Duval and Mr. Vine.
Mr. Mayor, I think that pest control would come under number 11. That's where I put it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Duval. Ms. Devine.
I was going to say the same thing. And additionally, we talked a lot about the exemptions. I would just encourage everybody to read the entire ordinance, but I just wanted to highlight and make special note that D also says that places conducting essential services. So even if you're essential service and you're open, that you take all reasonable measures to limit the individuals and facilitate the social distancing. So we just need to make sure, just because you're open doesn't mean that none of other guide you to all the businesses that will remain open.
Right, and again, I just had 6 more brought to me. Also, I'm gonna go over these really quickly. We are not affecting someone's right to exercise religious freedom and worship. We cannot, but again, we can only underscore. I've talked to dozens of pastors, and everyone's been so responsible in trying to make sure we do what we can to encourage social distancing.
We're trying to monitor any additional ones that have come in. I think Ms. Hammond probably just reached them to you. rental cars continues to be asked. I'm sure that you all address that, or if that's something we need to continue to look at.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, and before
Yes.
you may want, when you finish, you may want to reiterate the effective date, sir.
Yeah, sorry. Very quickly, this is, okay. Again, church staff, we do not affect the right worship. Okay, in support of the ordinance with some colorful language. In support of the ordinance. Really want to see more from our larger retailers, as Mr. Rickman said, on curtailing exposure inside, maybe encouraging them to do more regarding curbside pickup and delivery. Support of the ordinance. And support of the ordinance, but also agreeing with Mr. Rickman on a number of points. And obviously we hear a number of concerns from folks. I know we all have of employees who do not necessarily see themselves as being essential, but their employers do. We are entering into economic times unlike we've seen maybe in the modern history of this country. So we all need to be diligent as to how we continue to pursue our professional positions. Apparently, the governor is speaking right now. He will not be doing stay-at-home work, executive order, or any type of shelter-in-place ordinance. Just that was just for clarity. The specific question, I know that the issue was raised to us earlier about the number of personnel at Fort Jackson, their ability to access rental cars in the execution of their duties. Was that the way it was asked, Ms. Wilson?
Sorry, yes. Yes, it was a multitude of ways, sir. That was one, sir, regarding.
It's covered in the added language we added.
Okay, all right, perfect. Thank you. All right, we're gonna conclude that discussion. And Ms. Wilson, as best we can, let's get through the Resilient Columbia plan and oh, I'm sorry, the ordinance. We gotta go ahead and move forward on an effective date of the stay home ordinance. It needs to be post haste. So let's give some thought to that. I would recommend 12:01, maybe Sunday morning. Give people time to adjust. Is that amenable to council?
That's what's in the draft.
Is that in there? Is that what's in there? Okay. All right. Someone just sent me that question. I don't know who sent me that. Okay. Is it 12? It's 12:01 Sunday morning, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Good deal. All right. So that's determined. That's determined. Yes, sir.
I'm sure folks will know this, but I think we might want to reiterate that normally a document such as this, most folks may want to maybe look at only the city website and so forth. But I'm sure you might want to let them know that we're going to use every media outlet that we normally work with, or may add more, to make sure that this is widely spread throughout.
You encourage people to go to columbiasc.gov. I'm going to speak to the press at some point this afternoon, just to make sure folks are getting information, not only, because a lot of us still sometimes just read a headline and don't
Right.
read the entire story. But we want to encourage people to go to columbiasc.gov, recognize that this is an important document, but it's a living document that we will obviously have the ability and authority to come back and address any modifications in the future. But I'll speak to the press this afternoon to try and make sure again we're pulling ourselves back to the facts, Sam.
Right.
Ms. Devine, you had something, and then Mr. Rickenman.
I did, but I'll send it to TK. I just got a question about University of South Carolina, but I don't want to prolong this, so I'll send it to TK, and if you guys could look at it, see whether or not it's included.
Thank you.
That would be good.
Thank you, Mr. Rickenman, and then Mr. McDowell.
One of the things that we need to discuss and figure out ways, we need to figure out a way to create an opportunity for the shift workers who are working late, hospital, EMS, and all of them to get food. There is not enough storage for them to bring their to work. I tried to reach out to Palmetto Health Command to figure it out. Their line of rest. We need to do some kind of waiver on our curfew to allow folks to deliver late after 11 or something to fill that void. The folks are working overtime and extra, and the majority of their cases are not to deal with the coronavirus, but dealing with real other life-threatening issues. So if we could try to figure out that piece, or if we need to pass something or make an adjustment to our curfew, I'd appreciate if we could talk about that at the appropriate time.
I would
thank
support
you.
that.
Absolutely. And Daniel, thank you you've been working hard on that one for several days, even
Right.
when some folks have been exuberant and others have been slow moving. So whatever we could do to effectuate that, we support that 100%. It's amazing in this type of a disaster, our frontline workers are different frontline workers, and these folks need help and support. Mr. Davis, and then Ms. Devine, and then I want the city manager to get on with the agenda, y'all. Mr. Davis, Ms. Devine, Mr.
No,
McDowell, Mr. Rick.
my comment was that I supported Daniel's point just now, which
Okay.
we affirmed.
Absolutely.
So we're on the same page.
Absolutely. Okay.
There's a lot of online chatter going on about that people can't walk on the sidewalks and travel.
We want people to continue to enjoy their lives. And Tamika, we can reiterate for Will. Are we live? Still, Ms. Wilson?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ms. Devine, you had a question. I think I have an answer for you.
Yes, sir. I just received a question as to whether or not this would prohibit people who are currently volunteering in the community to support the needs that we have right now. And so I would like us to speak to that. I don't know if this.
Yeah, my sense would be that if someone is volunteering services to meet an identified essential business or nonprofit operation, then yes, it should be qualified, included there. Okay. All right. Mr. McDowell.
Mr. McDowell, I would hopefully ask our PR department, and so getting this news out, if we could also send some out to our community presidents so that they can disseminate some of that information within the community.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I believe staff is coming together with a list of frequently asked questions. Do we know when that will be available? And then I think we're also going to have a designated phone line for people to call to ask those questions. Is that correct, Ms. Wilson?
Yes, sir. And our COVID-19 response brief will start tomorrow, going out to the public as well.
Great. Thank you, ma'am.
I assume we'll have the FAQ, at least the first draft of it, available post haste?
Yes, sir, we will. We're working on it as we speak.
Are we prepared to issue the phone number for those who want to reach out with questions at the appropriate time, or would you rather wait until the FAQ goes out?
We can give the number now. Are you on the line? Are we set to have, or Tiffany, are y'all set for those phone calls at customer care?
Ms. Wilson, this is Clint. Tiffany and I talked about it. I've sent the draft to her. We certainly would love to have some frequently asked questions and clarification, but we do believe it'd be appropriate to use the 545-3300 number.
Thank you, Clint. Mr. Mayor, we'll start advertising that probably later this evening, but definitely by in the morning, the customer care will be equipped to answer as many questions as possible.
Sure.
545-3300.
803-545-3300. All right, Mr. Rickenman.
I do think that we need to encourage the big box folks to do like Publix and others and have sanitizer and everything up front, because right now it's just a wild, wild west. And we need to make sure that they take extra precautions. They can't just open the doors and have hundreds of people walking through their store without having sanitizers and other things at the door.
Dan,
that should be required, actually.
Yeah, I don't think it's part of the ordinance that was passed, but I do think it needs.
Who wants Mayor, Mr. Mayor? I'm sorry, Mr. Davis, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to know, I completely agree with Councilman Rickman. How do we enforce that extra layer of cleanliness and policy as a city?
Teresa, do you want to give any insight on that? I mean, I guess they vary, and I mean, we're talking about the big boxes in the city limits, but I have seen people that are doing that. Call out certain stores, but I know some are actually washing down the buggies when you get there, etc. So we could, I guess, have our inspectors to go out and check. I don't know that. I mean, that's not something that's already required. So, any insight?
Yeah, we would have to put that in place, and we'd have to do an ordinance for it. But most places have systems in place now, or they're advertising that they do. So,
well, I going back to the point I tried to make, I think moving forward, whatever communication format we're going to be using, we can put that out as a courtesy in terms of how we want to partner with them. That's one of the activities we'd like to see and encourage them to do that. Obviously, if it's not an ordinance, we can't mandate it, but I think we can communicate our concern and the partnership that we want to have with them, and educating the public and them doing their part to make sure that once folks cross that threshold, they're in a safe environment, or as safe as it can be.
All right. Thank you.
Great point. Thank you.
All right. Madam City Manager, let's.
Yes. Okay. At this time, City Council discussion action at moving forward with our next item is a Resilient Columbia Small Business and Nonprofit Stabilization Package. We have several members of our team who will be a part of the presentation, to include Missy Gentry, our Assistant City Manager for Operations, Missy Kaufman, Budget and Program and Grants Management Director, Melissa Lindler, the Director of Office of Business Opportunities, and Ryan Coleman, our Economic Development Director. And at this time, we'll get started.
Hello. Hi, this is Melissa. We're going to talk today a little bit about the Small Business Stabilization Program that Council passed last week. Since then, we continue to, We continue to put things in place for both the small business and the nonprofit stabilization package. We're updating our website. Next slide. We're updating our website on a constant basis. And I will say that the City of Columbia home site is our primary site that we're using for a lot of our information to make sure things are out there immediately, and also for ease of access for our constituents and our small business owners to find information that we put out there. Economic development and OBO, we've been working tirelessly over the past couple of days, putting together our program that we're going to share with you today. We also are sharing information on our websites as well as social media platforms that we utilize, making sure that all local information, the state information, as well as national and federal information is shared in a timely manner. We've been getting a lot of calls lately, both economic development and the OBO office, and rest assured we're returning those calls. We are answering our emails as quickly as we can. A lot of our calls are coming in because people are just worried. They don't know what's going to happen. Our small business owners are looking for resources, especially those businesses, as the survey indicated, with 5 or less employees. They're really struggling right now. We've taken calls from those small business owners. We've also, economic development has had meetings with the business associations this past Tuesday. They met with them, and we got feedback from them as far as what some of their concerns are with their small businesses, what they've heard. And what we tried to do was incorporate not only the results that we got from our survey that we did, since we actually put it out there. As you can tell, we have 1,245 responses, which is very, very good. Aisha has been very diligently keeping up with that and making sure that we are kept abreast on what those results are. That survey will end on tomorrow. So if you know of anyone that has not completed the survey, or if anyone's on the line right now that has not completed it and they're a small business owner, please make sure you go to the website. It's on our landing page. It's on my page. It's our OBO's page. It's also Economic Development's page, and complete the survey. I mentioned earlier, or just a short while ago, about the meeting with the business associations. Of course, the other things that the city has taken towards providing additional support to our small business community, bagging parking meters for restaurant takeout access, temporarily eliminating parking meter enforcement. And in regards to our commercial revolving loan fund, we have received numerous calls from them requesting modifications, so we are processing those. We are trying to set up our home offices now to be able to do those in an efficient way, but also to make sure that we're still in accordance with our federal guidelines that are the sources for those funds. So last time you actually council approved of $1.5 million for the Small Business Forgivable Loan Program and our loan loss revenue fund. And we will have some more information on that towards the end of this presentation. And what we were able to do in about 3 days, working to the wee hours of the morning, both OBO and the Economic Development Office, was develop some preliminary draft criteria and an application for the Small Business Forgivable Loan Program that we sent to you earlier today. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at that, the questions, some of the guidelines that we put in place. We wanted it to be somewhat consistent to our existing loan programs that we have, but because this is something that is unprecedented, it's something that we haven't experienced before, we also wanted to make sure it was fair, it was streamlined, and it was done in a way that we can get the resources to our small businesses in a quickly fashion. I'm not going to go through all of the different survey results. I know you've had a chance to look at this. We will actually put this survey on our website and also on the landing page of the city's website and on Economic Development's website on Friday after we get all the responses in. That, again, the survey results will close tomorrow. I will highlight a couple of things as we go through this. Most of the results, again, we have 1,245 respondents. Those businesses that responded were, most of them, 37.43%, have been in business for more than 10 years. 15.34% have been in business for 1 to 2 years. 8.35% have been in business for less than a year, and 21.61% have been in business for 3 to 5 years. Type of businesses, I do want to highlight that most of those responses came from other types of industries. It was 52.21%. And those businesses tended to be it's not, okay. Did it move? Yep. No, it needs to go back one. You missed the slide. How long and type? Okay. So those businesses tended to be that the majority of our responses, over 52%, came from salon and barber shops, landscaping, retail, gym, fitness, consulting, sales, photography, bakery, coffee shops, catering, daycare, and event rental. In regards to monthly expenses, the majority of our respondents, 22.25%, actually spent less than, 40.48% actually spent less than $5,000 per month in monthly operating expenses. One of the main issues that the majority of our I just keep going. Is it moving? It's not moving. There's that one. No, next one. Okay. So in regards to what are your top concerns in operating your business during the pandemic, the majority of our businesses responded that lack of cash flow to cover operating expense was the major concern, and also reduction in customer demand. My mouse stopped working, so please. Excuse me. Yeah. In regards to how has it affected your business, this pandemic, the majority of our respondents said that the depletion of cash reserves has been the major impact that most of our businesses have experienced, and also their hours of operation, and also event cancellation. When asked, have you had to reduce the number of employees working for your business as a result of this epidemic? And the majority said yes, temporarily. That was at 45.22%. And we also had 34.78% that responded that no, they have not reduced any employees. And if their workforce had been reduced, did they anticipate reductions in the future? If so, how many employees? The majority of the respondents at 34.62% said yes, and it was 1 to 2 employees. And one question that we certainly paid attention to as we put together these documents for the stabilization program was this question. In regards to what type of assistance does your business need during this crisis, the majority of our respondents at 74.94% said short-term working capital and a delay of utility payments at 45.94%, and a delay of fees and taxes at 52.29%, as well as tax credits at 44.10%, and deferred lease or mortgage payments at 52.85%. Okay. So as a result of looking at our different responses from our survey, also working with the Office of Economic Development, who also provides services to our small business community, listening to our partners who we've been in constant contact with, our partners being SBA, SBDC, the University of South Carolina, and others that are providing services to our small business community. What we're proposing is that we do loans, small business stabilization funds, forgivable loan funds, up to $10,000 to provide immediate relief for a period of 2 to 4 weeks for a 2-year term with 50% of the loan actually forgiven annually at the anniversary of the origination of the loan. Eligible applicants would include businesses that have been in existence for at least a year, businesses with a physical establishment within the corporate limits of the City of Columbia, businesses with 100 or less employees, but priority would be given to businesses with 50 or less employees, businesses with documented losses due to the pandemic, sorry, and must agree to provide requested financial information as well that we've asked for in the application. Ineligible applicants are businesses exclusively residential, franchises, hotels and motels, liquor stores, national regional chain businesses, financial lending institutions, private membership or fraternal organizations and businesses, business owners that have defaulted on a City of Columbia loan within the last 15 years, businesses with 51% or more of revenue from alcohol sales and adult-oriented businesses, and businesses owned in part or fully by City of Columbia staff, administration, or leadership. Are there any questions right now? Okay.
Questions on that or overall, Melissa?
What was the question? I'm sorry, what was the question?
Now I was gonna say, is that the end of your part or you've got more on your part?
We do.
Okay.
We do. I just wanted to make sure.
I have questions at the end of your part.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So some of the criteria that we said that we'll look at when we're actually evaluating the different applications that we do get in, priority again would be given to businesses with 50 or less employees that demonstrate losses of 50% or more in average revenue, businesses with plans for recovery, exhibits a commitment to retaining their employees as long as possible, businesses that need working capital to support payroll expenses, rent, mortgage payments, utility expenses, or similar expenses that occur in the ordinary course of business, adaptability, innovation, and responsiveness to COVID-19, and unable to access capital through alternative sources. What I'm finding in the research that we've been working through and looking at, and as these different stimulus packages unroll from the federal government, a number of things are going to be covered for our small businesses through our traditional SBA 7A program, and also through their emergency funding that they released last week. There's still going to be some funding gaps with our smaller businesses that may not actually qualify for traditional loans. So this program, what we're suggesting would be to help actually fill that gap, to provide some immediate assistance to those businesses that do not qualify or do not have access to any lines of credit right now at traditional financial institutions. And once this passes, if you all are fine with it, we will use it to different websites and other marketing mechanisms, both on our social media sites, economic development social media site, City of Columbia's main page, our partner sites. They will help us get this information out once we do finalize this document. We're actually scheduled today or tomorrow to hold a webinar with SBA and SBDC on not only what they're doing, the SBA, but also the technical assistance that's being provided by SBDC. That's the South Carolina Small Business Development Center. And also, if it's actually approved today, we'll also have information on this webinar about this program, this loan program, and how applicants can actually apply and how they can actually access the documents that we approved today. We're also looking at doing a webinar early next week. It's my understanding that the city will actually have access to the Zoom function so that we could probably host about 1,000 applicants or people that have an interest in learning about the loan program. So this will be the first one that we host. We'll probably do several of them, but the one that we do next week, we'll actually record that one so we can play it back on our different websites, OBO's website again, Economic Development, and also on the city's main website. In response to the immediate need that most of our small businesses are experiencing right now. What we're suggesting and what we would like to request from council is that based on the feedback that the small business community has given us and based on what we have heard individually from our small business community and also our partners, is that we actually increase the Small Business Stabilization Fund loan program from $500,000 to $1 million. And this increase would result in a reduction to our loan loss reserve fund from $1 million to $500,000, therefore not actually showing any type of increase in the overall program. It would still be at $1.5 million. The timeline, if this is approved by council today, with any changes that you make, we will be able to actually release the program criteria and application upon your approval, and we could actually start accepting applications immediately. The review of the applications upon receipt will actually be done in collaboration with the Office of Business Opportunities and Economic Development and some other departments and some of our partnering agencies that are working with the small business community now. SBA, SDDC, they have all agreed to be a part of the review process if we need them to be. What's good about having our partners at the table during this process is that they know our small business community just as much as we do. They also have been working with a lot of these small businesses during this crisis, so they know what the needs are, and they're familiar with the businesses themselves. They're also familiar with those businesses that are seeking funds from other places that will be helpful during this process, as we have very limited funds available to get out into the community. So if everything goes well and it is approved today, beginning the week of Monday, April 6th, we can start sending out award notifications along with the loan documentation, as well as issue checks that same week. What we would do then would provide bi-weekly reports to council regarding the applications received, the dollars awarded, and the businesses served. Oh, okay. Yes.
That all sounds fantastic, and I appreciate y'all being ready to go immediately. The only, obviously, you know how we can be sometimes. We want it now. I think as much as we can do to arrest that time frame to get folks resources even sooner than April 6th would be very much appreciated. And I stepped away for a moment. I'm not sure if the question was asked, but I'd like a particular focus on those small businesses that are very important, but may not be deemed essential under our ordinance, with significant attention, if not preference, being given to them on the stabilization fund, the forgivable loan fund. I'd like that to be one of the criteria, the number of small businesses, sole proprietorships, and others. I'm thinking about obviously like barbers and hairdressers and others that might be affected by this 2-week period. If we can get them qualified and get money to them sooner than April 6th, I completely support that. Okay.
Yes, sir. We certainly can make that adjustment on there, but you also then like to adjust. Right now, the commercial revolving loan fund defines a small business as a business with 50 or less employees. Would you like to also make the adjustment then that we're looking at prioritizing those businesses with 5 or less employees? That would probably be more the focus of this group that you're talking about, if we were to do that.
I mean, I think you'd have a better idea based on your survey as to who's out there, but I'm just specifically thinking first, of course, our food service restaurants and those that have been affected even earlier by the governor's order, and then secondarily those folks, and I'm just thinking of barbers and salons and others. However you can structure it, and it may be on the number of employees. It may be some attention paid to those that are not on the list of essential services. Okay, but expediting the funds getting out the door. Time is not our friend. Let's see if we can get these processed and checks moving by next week.
And one of the main things that we're looking at too was, having them have their financial statements for the end of the month available. So that may prevent some of them from being responsive to getting the information in. But if someone does have that, we'll try to expedite. If we start getting those in and they already have that information, then we'll start to expedite that at that point.
Yeah. I think sooner rather than later. I'm not sure every small business that you encounter, particularly some of the smaller mom and pops, will have full and clean financials. So we're going to have to exercise some good judgment and latitude in making that happen. But I think some reasoned decision making that's not overwhelmingly heavy on rigorous bank related paperwork is important. Okay.
Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We'll make those adjustments. Thank you.
Ms. Wilson, can I comment, please? I want to thank staff for pulling all this together. It's wonderful, and it's going to do so much for our business community. I would also like to ask Ms. Wilson, can we start thinking about possible avenues for a second fund if we need to go to that? If we could really dig into the city revenues to see if there's any other areas where we can get creative for our small businesses that are going to be suffering. So I just wanted to throw that out there to consider moving forward.
Yes, sir. I think the adjustment with sort of flipping the two programs as far as the funding is going to allow this program to allow the staff to be a little bit more nimble and quick with this program, because I think this is where they're finding need most immediately. And then I think that would then also allow them, as they are servicing as many businesses as soon as possible, to see how far the funds are taking us.
Sure.
So we can continue.
Great. Thank you all so much.
Yes, sir.
And to add to that, Ms. Wilson, you're exactly correct. There's also going to be additional funding coming down from the federal sources as well over the course of the next couple of weeks. The last bill that they passed in the Senate yesterday, that's the third bill that they passed within 2 weeks. That will actually go through the House on tomorrow. And so we'll start to see exactly how that funding will go as far as what businesses, again, that they will be providing assistance to, and what businesses may still be left out. But hopefully, as this goes on and they see that there's still needs out there, there's going to be additional things put in place and additional funding that will come down from the feds to the state and also to the localities to help us further address and support our small business community.
Thanks, Melissa. Mr.
So that was for my questions. First of all, like Melissa, one of the criteria you had unable to access other alternative sources. And honestly, I guess wonder, how do you make that determination? And what I'm thinking is we actually will be able to have people access our sources quicker than some of the other alternative sources. And the issue or the intent is to get money into these businesses as soon as possible. So I'm just wondering, what is our criteria for that determination, and make sure that doesn't hold up people being able to access this fund quickly?
We do have another follow-up question on the application that asks actually specifically what sources are you going after, or what sources you've actually applied for, and if you actually received a response yet, and what that response was. A lot of our respondents or the applicants, they have just submitted their SBA applications because that actually was just opened up last Friday. So they're still in that process, going through the SBA emergency funds that they put there. But again, we're going to have additional money that's going to be coming down through this new third fund or third package, stabilization package that the federal government will approve tomorrow, that will add additional money to our SBA 7A traditional program. So that's the program where you actually go through a bank and you get an SBA loan, back loan through a bank. So those loans there are going to be more for your businesses that are bankable. Those businesses that have a relationship already with banks, they probably already have a line of credit. It's going to be easier for them to access those funds quicker because of that relationship. Again, what we're worried about are those that do not have the lines of credit. So by looking at their financial statements and some of the other questions that we're asking, we should be able to find that information. Also, talking to SBA, they'll have an idea, and we do have a memorandum of agreement and understanding with them that they could help us verify some other information. If there's other sources in terms of SBA funds that they're going after, they can help us with that.
Okay. All right. Because that's what I was just wondering, because I do know a few folks who have attempted to do the SBA application online, and it's very cumbersome. And I know some folks who are still haven't had a chance to complete it. And I'm just wondering, if they're applying for that, but they haven't finished that process or they hadn't heard back, I just didn't want this to hold anything up. And then my second question was, you kind of answered it, but I did just hear today that, yeah, under the CARE package that will be hopefully passed tomorrow by the House and then signed by the President, that is supposed to be maybe a more simplified process, that they don't go through the online portal on SBA, but they go to their bank's SBA lender. So I was just wondering, I'm sorry?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so are we part of that at all, or are we making, I guess if people come to us, are we referencing that process and letting them see if they're able to do that so that we can keep this fund going for
correct.
People that aren't bankable?
That is correct. And when we actually start to make those awards and we see, instead of just telling someone, no, you're not going to be funded, we actually want to direct them to those resources and other options that are available to them. So we will direct them to those resources at that time. In regards to the SBA application that's currently out there, the emergency fund that was set up last week, I did speak with the SBA representative today, and as of yesterday, they have streamlined that process, making it a little easier to fill out the forms, but also requiring less documents to be submitted. So they're really trying to work to be a little more accessible, also to make sure that people can actually submit the information and submit it in a timely manner. We also had some complaints. We heard a lot of people saying that they were trying to get on the website and they weren't able to. So again, this is one portal for a whole nation. So please keep that in mind. It will take time at times to get through. Things may freeze up. I would just encourage you, if you have any constituents out there, just to tell them stay on there. If there's anything that we can do to assist, we will. We do help people put together their loan packages as long as it's not a loan for us. So usually we'll refer those loans out to SBA or SBDC for those entities to help them and provide assistance. But in terms of SBA loans that are coming out now, that's something that we do anyway. So we would only just continue to do that to make sure that people understand the process. Brad is working with SBDC now to familiarize himself with that, the whole SBA loan documents that are required, the whole process, as well as criteria, and helping them put their packages together. Again, no direct one-on-one contact, but it would be over the phone and via email if necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get that other resource I sent you today also?
I did. The GoFundMe page, is that, which one?
I don't, but I just picked one. So if you got something from me, I just think, we're still compiling a list, because not everybody we're going to be able to help. Are we still compiling a list of additional resources for folks?
We are. That's something, everything that we sent out on social media, and I think I can speak for economic development as well. We're also posting that information on our main website. So whatever goes out is also going to be on our main landing page for each one of our departments as well.
And Melissa, for the council members, tell them again right now the best way to communicate to their constituents or business owners where to find the information. Our website, Ryan's website, it'll be linked to the homepage. We've been keeping a list of individuals and businesses that have been asking for this information. So starting today, we should tell them to go just to columbiasc.gov or do we need to be any more specific?
I think that's missing. I just had this conversation. We really want to make it easy for our constituents to find the information. So probably using the main website as the main link to have all of the applications there and all the documents there. So columbiasc.gov, just have them go there with links to our website, with links to the departmental websites for additional resources. But we will have a link there on our different pages too, to the actual application as well.
Okay.
And yes, ma'am, we have been keeping track of everyone that's calling in. We're receiving a lot of calls, a lot of emails about the process and how do they apply. So the sooner we get this out, I know that it won't take long before we'll start getting applications in.
Okay. Thank you.
The important thing here again is the move fast, y'all. We passed everything, move fast on getting capital. Teresa and Melissa and your whole team, thank y'all so much for moving quickly and getting these protocols in place. Only ask that we move very fast to help out these businesses. All right. And,
Yes, Mayor. I think Melissa's got a few more slides, and then we've also got the nonprofit side of the house. Missy Kaufman's going to report out on those funds availability. But while I have the opportunity, I can't say enough about this team. I mean, they're passionate about it. Melissa and her folks will administer the program, but they really have worked around the clock to get this done. So thanks to Melissa and Ryan and Missy Gentry and Jeff, all of them have just really dedicated themselves to this effort.
Amen.
Thank you. And I will say also, because of the abundance of applications that we will be getting, usually we don't have other departments actually accessing the websites or accessing the applications, but because we're going to be getting so many, economic development will be a part of that process this time too, helping us filter through the applications. And as you see, there's a pre-qualification section on the application that will weed out some of the applicants before we so we could actually make sure we're helping our citizens, those residents that reside in the city of Columbia. And there's some other questions on there also to filter applications out. The last slide that I want to talk about is our loan loss reserve fund. As we mentioned, we definitely want to try to address, as the mayor has said, those small businesses that have the most immediate need. So by us reducing the fund allocation that you allocated last week to $500,000 for our loan loss reserve fund and increasing the one for our stabilization forgivable loans to $1 million, by reducing this one to $500,000, we're still able to help get money or get funds into those borrowers that do not qualify through traditional banks. Again, because SBA has placed additional funding within the 7A program, now the banks have even more incentive, hopefully, to actually lend to those individuals. What we're going to suggest is that we maybe form or we work with our community development financial institutions, those institutions that are familiar and have a working relationship with some of our more riskier borrowers, and they can be more flexible in how they make loans and in their parameters that they set around those loans. Working with our banking institutions also, though, to encourage them to make loans or grants to these CDFIs as a participant in our loss loan reserve fund. We could still leverage the resources to provide more services to those borrowers or to those small businesses that may not qualify through traditional means, but is a gap that I still see, even with the existing funding that's coming out of Washington. Those borrowers, CDFI, they have not been mentioned yet, so we still need to concentrate now at this moment on those borrowers that may not actually qualify through traditional means. Okay. Any questions regarding that?
No, I think after a period of time, Melissa, you determine when. Let's see what the interest is in the loan loss reserve, and if there's not, then I'd say at the right time we look at a higher and better use of those funds if we don't see much lending going on as the economic work stabilizes itself. Maybe it needs to go stable in the SBSF. Okay, so let's
Yes,
maybe
sir.
evaluate that in the not too distant future.
Okay, if the council is okay with us focusing on our CDFIs, then we can get the letters out on Friday with your approval, your signature, and maybe do a video conference with bank presidents about the program to see interest. And once, we get responses back in, we can make the determination at that time. And if there's not an interest, we could put the money back into our loan fund.
Yeah, but we don't need this. We don't need to see it again. We don't need to see it again. Let's keep on trucking.
Okay.
Mr. Davis?
Yeah, I just want to, reiterate what has been said. I am very impressed with the amount of information that staff have put together, and not only just, the resources that the city is making available, but they've actually put together a roadmap for small businesses and businesses impacted by where we are now. And I think that's the one thing that's going to maybe strengthen our partnership. Even the fact that we're looking at businesses that may have done business with the city years ago, 15 years. They're either in the program or they're not, but it's an example of just how much I think research that they've put together. The information hit the street and the responses were coming back rapidly. So that says a lot about the process, the system, and the staff. So, I've got a couple of folks that are waiting to get more and respond to what we've already got out of what we've said that we're going to do. And I think that says a lot too. So I think they did a good job and appreciate it.
Thank you. And as you look through this, or as you get your constituents start to respond to you, if there's anything else that we can be a service or we need to look at, please let us know. As this unfolds, it's new to everyone. But to reiterate what the mayor said earlier, cities are calling us. They're waiting for us to roll this out so they can use it as a roadmap and as an example or a template for programs to put in place at their different municipalities. So it's not perfect, but it's something, and it's something I think that a lot of our small businesses may need at this moment. Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I guess other than the change, shifting more the give a loan program, or I guess we can just in the interest of full clarity, go ahead and vote to endorse this. And Melissa, again, Teresa, let's go ahead and shorten these timelines as much as possible. And obviously, whatever information we need to have in hand as a council to make sure that constituents know exactly access these funds, we need that sooner rather than later as well. So we can be clear in our communications to them. Is there a motion to approve the plan as laid out by staff?
So move.
A second.
Second.
Moving previous question, clerk call the roll.
Mr. Vernon?
Yes.
Mr. Rickerman?
Yes.
Mr. McDowell?
Are you on mute, Ed? Keep going.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Ms. Devine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Aye, ma'am.
Thank
I don't have the agenda in front of me. I'm sorry, Teresa. Anything else on the agenda? I want to bring up the other issue just as an aside regarding testing. Is there anything else on the agenda?
I thought
We're not finished with
nonprofit. Yeah.
Oh, please. I'm sorry. Oh, please, nonprofits. I apologize.
That's okay, and it would be fine for you to do two motions to endorse because they're really do reciprocal programs. So Missy Kaufman will go through that program pack.
Good afternoon. I know we are falling on a long day, so we'll make this quick. To remind City Council, included in the Small Business and Nonprofit Stabilization Package that was adopted last week by City Council,
$500,000 was included for nonprofits, with the intention of it being targeted for nonprofit agencies that provide services for our vulnerable populations and meeting some of our unmet needs. Since that time, we have been working with our partners in the community and have come together in a coalition to coordinate our relief efforts, working with United Way of the Midlands as well as Central Carolina Community Foundation. We're also reaching out to neighboring jurisdictions for participation as well to broaden our response. And our purpose here for joining a coalition is so that we can further stretch our response in our community and to make sure that we are reaching as many opportunities to support as possible. We want to make sure that our efforts also help to reduce grant duplication and increase our grant impact. So we think there will be a lot of benefit from having a combined and a coordinated effort. We'll have a unified online grant application for our applicants as well. We're recommending that we fund actually in 2 phases, and our first phase is suggested for the nonprofits providing this direct and immediate support for our population, working with seniors, disabled individuals, hourly or seasonal workers, homeless folks, are different populations that are vulnerable. We also are suggesting that we allocate a portion of the funding to nonprofits that are in need of operational support that may be impacted by COVID-19. As we can see from even our nonprofits or our small businesses themselves in a lot of sense, and they have an increased operational cost. They're also seeing possible donation support drop, as well as a lot of the events that are being canceled would have been events that would have benefited those organizations operationally. So we're suggesting for a second phase that would be really allocated, that would be done more at a later date after we get through these immediate responses. The eligible applicants, whether phase 1 or phase 2, would still be open for 501c3 nonprofits located within city limits, looking for preferences given to the ability to demonstrate services provided to City of Columbia residents. We too are also suggesting a grant cap of $10,000 that the applicants could continue to apply. Once they've depleted those funds and reported them successfully, they would be able to apply again.
Bless you.
Oh, excuse me.
We, of course, would also ask for the organizations to provide specific information, limited just or briefly just talking about at least project proposals, other sources of funds they would be seeking and have either asked for or have received, whether it be from private foundations or from the other funding institutions, whether government or corporate. We would be asking that they would provide as a report the type of assistance they provide, number of individuals served, and any partnerships that they may have worked with. We would also ask that they provide 990s. For our timeline, we're looking to release the grant no later than April 1st, the online grant application. We too would use an internal review process so that we could streamline and be able to make decisions quickly about the grant applications coming forward. As for the phase 2, that's still to be determined as we look with our coalition partners. They too are also looking to spread their available dollars towards operational support for the nonprofits as well. That ends really the description of what we've talked about with regards to the nonprofit grant program. If there's any questions specifically about what we've proposed and what we're looking forward, we will publish information, of course, once things are finalized and discussed. So we'll just make sure that there's any questions or conversations that City Council may have.
Missy, this is Howard. On the information you sent out yesterday, which was the stabilization package, which you've changed it a little bit in your presentation today. 2 things. Do you think $10,000 is sufficient amount to do any good with these nonprofits? Should we
No.
raise it? And number two, on the one that I'm looking at, you had a timeline that the funds must be expended by May the 31st of 2021. I thought we needed to get these funds out quickly and be spent quickly. Why should we give them to 2021?
That's in line with some of our other programs. We certainly don't expect many of the organizations to take that long. That's at least the minimum that we would need just for our own financial reporting. But we can certainly shorten that requirement.
I would say December the 31st of 20.
Okay.
Missy, can I ask a question? And I know we don't want to have it too stringent. So, we don't know exactly what their operational needs are. But I know when we first talked about it, it was really a lot for, a lot of these operational needs would be, to keep staff or, their utilities, those kind of that working capital over or not working capital, their actual operational expenses for the next month or so. Do we not want to be more specific on what they can do and also think about whether or not they're going to be laying off folks to make sure that they're able to pay their staff?
Yes, ma'am. We agreed that that would be part of the additional information that we would want to gather before we started doing grants for operational support. In talking with our coalition partners, they have done some surveys similar to what our small business program that Melissa just discussed, to make sure that we are being able to maximize those opportunities as broadly as possible.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
All right, so do we need action again? Or is that contemplating the first, we'll go ahead and move forward with this too. Am I missing something, Teresa?
No, sir. I think we are just, wanting to make sure you all understood we were looking to collaborate too with the coalition.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. For this, and we'll work on details of that.
Missy and Harry and the whole team have done a really good job coordinating. I've been on several of the calls this week with everyone else, and I think obviously we're strongest when we work together. So that's definitely important. Obviously we also have I got the email from Senior Resources. I want to make sure folks do know under the stay home, stay safe ordinance that folks will operate in their food banks and Meals on Wheels, and others will still be getting their food. Everyone's still going to have their essential needs met, so that's important as well. Just want to clarify that. So some of our most vulnerable seniors don't worry about whether or not their needs are going to be met. I move approval again of the small business and nonprofit stabilization package. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. So any discussion? Move the previous question. Clerk call roll.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Yes.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Mr. Vine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye. Again, Madam City Manager, just as we've moved, with some light speed with some policy making, let's move at light speed and on the administrative side of this. I know there's always a tendency amongst all of us as elected officials to want to see, and hear. We don't need to touch it again. We need you to the team to be able to move quickly to deploy this capital to the community. So exercise good judgment and recognize that all businesses are not created equal, but they are equally important. So let's make sure we meet those needs in a rapid manner. Ms. Devine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, thank you, staff. I think these are a great start, and I think they're very needed at this point. I just want to continue to put this on the radar. I know everything is happening in Washington very quickly, so we don't know what funds will come out and how they'll be distributed. You know, certainly still disappointed that we didn't get a direct allocation out of what was passed last night. And so,
And clarify that, Tamika. So the funding, the direct allocation will go to cities of $500,000 or more.
Or more. Yeah.
$500,000 more. So that means no counties in South Carolina or cities in South Carolina. We aggressively lobbied to change that. So it really means only about 36 or 38 cities in the country. Our allocation is will go straight to the governor's office for allocation across the state, and we will as aggressively lobby for those resources too. I just want to clarify that for folks who are not.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So to that point, hopefully we can aggressively lobby, the governor to have some other assistance that will go directly to our citizens. But I just want to place on our radar, we're dealing with the businesses, we're dealing with the nonprofits, and certainly because we're dealing with that, there will be some flow through to individuals and families. But I still think that there will be needs and gaps that we will maybe be revealed to us over the next month or so. Checks of $1,200 won't go very far, and I'm still concerned about those families who need some assistance. So as we can aggressively look at other resources to have to maybe either this phase 2 under the nonprofit and work with our nonprofits that may help families with, rental needs. I still believe mortgage assistance like SC Help had in 2008, but we need to look at what our needs may be and continuously aggressively look at ways that we can help support the gaps that some of our families will need over the next couple months.
Yeah. May I make one final? Yeah, Mr. Davis.
No, I ditto to Tamika's point. As we're saying now, we know what the needs are. It's documented. We've done our part locally to do as much as we can to support small businesses and then small business owners with families for that matter. And it is incumbent upon us to continue in state to see what the governor's pot will really look like. And at the same time, it puts us in a position where we have to kind of make up for what the larger cities are going to get. And so I think that says that our work is still cut out for us. But we're in a better spot today because of staff and what they've done with putting all of this together. So that it says again, we're all in it together, and the battle continues.
Amen. Just want to just put on. I mentioned it earlier that we're going to be moving forward with advancing additional testing here across the Midlands, focusing first on our frontline employees and our first responders. Just believing strongly that testing gives us your data, and data gives us intelligence, and intelligence gives us the ability to make more, much better policy decisions. So we're moving forward with that under the powers given to the city manager under our emergency order declaration. We're excited about what that could mean for the overall public health. So anything else we got, Ms. Wilson?
No, sir. I just want to say thank you to each one.
Thank you all.
Leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of you. You're a blessing. We're going to get through this together. We'll be a healthy and stronger community as a result of it. Is there a non-debatable motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second. Moving second. Any discussion? Move the previous question. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Yes.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Mr. Vine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye. And God bless y'all. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you.
all.
Bye, everybody.